everyone. Greetings. This is Naomi Wolf, and I'm here with a new subject, Hadley Ott, a health coach, an expert on Crohn's disease specifically. And he's got a new book coming out April 28th, 2026 called Drug-Free Crohn's, Overcoming Big Doctors, Big Hospitals, and Big Pharma. And it really grabbed my attention when Mr. Ott reached out to me because a loved one of mine has Crohn's disease. She suffered quite a bit. And, as you all know, if there are ways for us to be healthy without going the route of big pharma, which is not always the best way to go. I'm not a doctor, but we'll hear more about it from Mr. Ott. We really want to know about it. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Hadley Ott. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to do this.
Wonderful. And we, of course, love your accent. You're based in Tennessee. And so tell me your story, briefly, if you would. What led you to, obviously, I'm guessing, you have had your own Crohn's journey. I think you shared that. What led you to the publication of this book?
Right. I'll give you just kind of the quick rundown on it, and then we can go back and explore more of any of these areas. So I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease when I was 12 in middle school, and basically went the next decade dealing with conventional medical treatments, everything from steroids, feeding tube, biologic drugs, surgery. And I reached the point just a few years out of undergrad while I was in grad school of complete desperation. I just was still having symptoms, still feel like I couldn't get anywhere with my conventional doctor, couldn't get them to let me try anything different, and kind of reached this low point where I kind of call it the nuclear option. I just had to go cold turkey. I took this leap of faith and quit my doctor, quit my medicine, hired a functional medicine provider, and went down this functional medicine rabbit hole and was able to heal myself naturally. And the experience was just so liberating. I felt called to write this book. So this was in the spring 2024. So 2 years ago, when I was in grad school at Troy, and I quit my medicine and quit the doctor, everything cold turkey. And a few months after the fact, in July 2024, while I was interning in DC, I just woke up one day with this strong call in my heart to write this book to try to help others, especially young people, young men who are in high school and college, and maybe they have Crohn's, they have IBS, ulcerative colitis, or autoimmune disease of any kind. And they've just been in this conventional medicine rut with the doctors and hospitals and pharma, and things aren't getting better at all for them. And they just need hope. They need to know that there is another way. And so I'm not a doctor either. But I was still able to go down this rabbit hole and figure out enough and find the right people to help me in order to become drug-free and symptom-free. And so, like I say, this was just such an amazing experience for me. I just felt called to try to help other people with it.
That's quite a story. That's extraordinary. And I guess, you're talking to someone who's not a doctor. So, I fully believe that everyone's entitled to describe his or her medical journey, and also to be a researcher, to look into, what causes these conditions and to reach their own conclusions. I don't think you need medical school to do that effectively, of course. And in some ways, of course, medical school disincentivizes some people from reaching the conclusions that are best for them. So tell me, first of all, how sad that you were diagnosed in middle school. That must have been very stressful, just developmentally. What were some of the things, you don't have to be personal, but what are some of the things young people in middle school with Crohn's disease deal with as they, reach the point of diagnosis, and then as they are treated by conventional medicine? For people who are unfamiliar with this condition, what are they suffering with?
Yeah, I try not to get too into the symptoms. A lot of them are really embarrassing, and you and your audience, you know what they are. So I try to keep that at a minimum, but I will go into a little bit of that. So for me, one thing that led up to my diagnosis was a combination of a lot of stress that I was dealing with in school, not really fitting in, just kind of being out of place and not having a ton of close friendships. And I really believe, and it's a huge part of this book, and is the social side to being healthy, the
Mm.
mental side to being healthy, how important it is to have a strong community, to have purpose. And so I was just kind of at this point in school where it was causing a lot of stress, new school, just not really fitting in, kind of out of place. And so I really think that your body takes that into account. And so if you're in an environment where maybe you're out of place or not fitting in, your body kind of takes that into account and almost gives you a reason to not have to go there, to get sick, to be in a hospital where you're on death's door in order to avoid that environment. So the things that I was experiencing at the time was a lot of vomiting, a ton of diarrhea, stomach pain.
Mm.
I was in the 6th grade at the time, and I was just withering away. So anytime I would eat, I would almost throw it up immediately. I
Gosh.
reached the point of not being able to eat without really sharp stomach pains.
Mm.
And I was 12 years old, and I had gotten down to 53 pounds.
Oh my goodness. Oh my heavens.
So,
Ridiculous.
people in my family, they said I looked like an Ethiopian. I was just withering away. And so that's what led to the initial hospitalization at Vanderbilt, where they did the colonoscopy and the other tests, and went home for a few days and then went back to the hospital again, and they confirmed and said it was Crohn's disease. And so that's kind of what got me started. I was kind of plugged into Vanderbilt, into their system from an early age. Spent a lot of time there growing up, and started with a feeding tube and started with steroids. But I guess back to your original question, the symptoms to look for then, it's the sharp stomach pains, the vomiting, the diarrhea, being tired. I think just not being active. I think young boys men in general are supposed to be really active. We're supposed to move. And, if you're 10, 11, 12 years old and you're not outside moving like you're supposed to, that should be a sign something's wrong.
Gosh, how awful. How awful. And it wasn't as if some foods you could keep down. I'm just remembering pregnancy and being, nauseated all the time. And there were some foods I could manage. Like I often joke that my daughter is made of pot roast from Irish bar down the street, which was the only thing I could manage. But it didn't matter what you ate or what someone with Crohn's disease eats. It's still impossible to keep it down.
Yes, ma'am. So, and this sounds kind of naive in hindsight, but we grew up eating fairly healthy, but not the healthiest at all. And, and I don't in no way blame my parents for this at all, because they didn't know what was happening, but we truly didn't know of anything other than to just keep trying different foods and then hoping for a different outcome. But it felt like no matter what I ate, it just caused the sharp stomach pains and the other symptoms. And so I was just kind of withering away. And then I guess leading up to that hospitalization, I mean, I had gone several days without being able to eat or keep anything down. So had really withered down weight wise. And then when I finally got to the hospital and started doing the feeding tube thing, that was really the first time, and I don't know when, that I was able to actually get some nourishment in my body and finally started to gain weight for a change.
Oh, how terrible. Why did a feeding tube allow your body to retain the nutrients? Was it something about like the digestive process wasn't working and the feeding tube bypasses that?
So the feeding tube, what that is it's a liquid formula, and you don't chew it. Of course, you put the tube in through your nose, down the esophagus, right to your stomach. And so it bypasses the first half of your digestive system, and it goes right into the stomach, right into the intestines. And it's really easy for inflamed intestines to digest. So any food, solid food, you really have to chew it up good. And again, this was just so much ignorance at a young age, and we just didn't know these things, that, how important it is to really chew your food before you eating it, and trying different foods like bananas, sweet potatoes, that are a lot easier once chewed up. for the GI tract to digest. But with the feeding tube diet, that basically comes down to it's this pre-digested stuff that's so easy for your intestines when they're inflamed to handle, to manage, to pass through somewhat normally and allow for that inflammation to heal.
Wow. Are Crohn's disease and IBS the same thing? Or are they related in that both have inflamed digestive tracts or inflamed intestines?
So IBS, it's a really good question. So IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, is kind of on one end of the spectrum right here, and then you have inflammatory bowel disease.
Oh, wow.
So inflammatory bowel disease includes Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis.
Oh, gosh.
And those are considered the worst conditions, and Crohn's disease is the worst of the two. Inflammatory, I'm trying to get them, I got to keep them straight. Irritable bowel syndrome is considered a lesser form of those two conditions, but a lot of the people who have it basically have the same symptoms and everything. So some people in this alternative healing world have a theory that there really is only Crohn's disease and that every diagnosis ultimately leads to it. So someone may have irritable bowel syndrome that then gets diagnosed as ulcerative colitis, that then gets diagnosed as Crohn's disease. So a lot of the symptoms overlap. And one of my theories for why someone may have IBS instead of Crohn's disease is whenever they have a test or something, for whatever reason, it may not show the results for the doctor to warrant a Crohn's diagnosis because symptoms can come and go so quickly, inflammation can come and go quickly. And so for whatever very frustrating reason, maybe they're just stuck in kind of this IBS camp and don't land in the UC or Crohn's camp.
So gosh, oh, how awful. So tell me, what were the kinds of foods you were eating that weren't so helpful for you, and what was the treatment Vanderbilt was giving that was not so helpful for you?
Yeah, so I grew up on the standard American diet, just a lot of processed foods, sweets, Cokes, fast food, eating healthy home cooked foods at times, but I mean, nothing was really off the table for me. I mean, I kind of ate it all. So, and I definitely know that contributed to the diagnosis. One of the big things that they did teach me early on, which was to their credit, something good. So they tell you that food doesn't matter. That's one of the big lies I talk about in the book. But one of the big things that they did tell me to do, and that I continue to do to this day, is keeping a food diary. So recording every single thing that I eat and then any symptoms that correspond with it. And so you're kind of able to identify on your own what foods are sort of causing the triggers. And so when I got out of the hospital, when I was 12, I really wanted to try to get healthier. I was really committed to that. My body was so weak. It was so frail. I hardly exercised. And while I was there, I was watching some college football games that were on. And so I wanted to try to build my body up. And, it sounds almost like a hopeless goal when I was in that state, but I wanted to try to get healthier and start exercising. So I cut out Cokes, I cut out the fast food. I really started to try to get healthier, and I continued that for a long time. Now, if you want me to kind of jump forward to what I did with the low FODMAP, I can get into that. But I would say that early on, after that initial diagnosis, I started cutting out sweets more, fast food, Cokes, milk was something that always bothered me, and I finally let that go. But I just made an effort to try to eat healthier foods.
Wow. At such a young age, that takes a lot of dedication and initiative. How did you manage that? Was your family on board? Did they take you shopping? Like, it's not that easy. I have a 14-year-old stepson, and I'm trying to visualize him like changing his diet. That kids are very dependent on what's around them. How did you accomplish what you did at that age?
Exactly. Yes, ma'am. So it is tough to do. And I will say, my approach was just do the best you can. I grew up with other siblings. I mean, things were tight. It wasn't as if we could go all in and I could eat the maker's diet or anything like that. But what I did was I just started to develop the discipline to avoid the foods that I knew were going to cause symptoms.
Mm.
So I started avoiding the sweets, avoiding the Cokes. And, people in the family, they'll give you a hard time for not eating the pie or the cake or, at a birthday or at a holiday. But it was something that once I cut out and felt good, I didn't miss any of these things.
Right.
So that's just one of the huge benefits to it. If you can have the discipline to cut out the foods that are causing symptoms, you're going to feel amazing. And you're not even really going to miss those foods that you used to eat because they made you feel sick.
And while you're running your business or funding your mission or managing your portfolio, you should be aware that lawmakers are writing rules that could wipe you out overnight or harm your clients or your property or your community. Legisector is your early warning system. Whether you're a small business owner tracking new tax codes or a nonprofit watching for grant changes or an investor scanning for regulatory shifts, Legisector keeps you informed in real time. Search bills by keyword, industry, or issue, state and federal, and get a dedicated legislative portal for your industry, ranging from cannabis to infrastructure, family issues, hedge funds, taxes, accounting, mortgages, real estate, 15 different sectors. Legisector gives you the edge to pivot, plan, and protect what you've built. Go to legisector.com and start tracking legislation before it tracks you. Sign up for a free 30-day trial now. Thank you.
Wow. So, and what did Vanderbilt, which is obviously a very famous, respected medical center and university, what did they want to do to treat you? What's conventional treatment for Crohn's disease medically?
Yes, ma'am. So they got me started on steroids was the very first thing that I got started. And so that causes moon face famously. But steroids are nothing you can stay on forever. And so I phased out of those and I did the feeding tube for about a year, actually. And it worked decently well. And I was still eating some regular food, but almost all of the nourishment that I was getting was from the feeding tube.
So excuse me for interrupting, but you'd have to leave school once a week or twice a week and go to the hospital and get hooked up to a feeding tube, or how did it practically work?
Yeah, so I actually did that at home. So I would put a feeding tube down my nose to my stomach.
Oh God. How challenging. Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay.
So yes, ma'am, I didn't mean to gross you out, but
no, it's not about gross. I just feel sad for you that you had to do that, or any kid or adult who has to do that. It sounds arduous, but please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Well, it was something that it kind of gave me a sense of accomplishment in a way, because nobody wants to ever stick a tube down their nose. But when I was 12 and 13 at this time, and I got really good at doing it. And so it was kind of, didn't enjoy it, but
Right.
It was kind of an accomplishment for me. Most people can do that type of thing.
You're
So
definitely achieving something.
Gave me something to be kind of proud of at the time.
Right.
But so I would put the tube down every night and put 4 cans of the formula in a IV bag type of thing.
Wow.
And just go to bed to the pump feeding me while I slept. And so
Wow.
I did that. And then in the morning, you take the tube out and just go on about your day. And
Amazing.
most days, I wasn't eating breakfast or eating school lunch. And, I might eat a little something for supper, but that's basically where I was getting all of my food from, was while I slept, that feeding tube would feed me. So.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, thank God that technology exists, as
Yes, ma'am.
horrible as it must be to deal with it day after day. Good for you. You kept yourself alive. I've got to think that school lunches don't help this condition. I get very upset about what they feed my stepson at his, very good, public school, it's all processed wheat, processed food that literally they don't even have kitchens anymore. They just heat it up in the microwaves. It's the worst. And it's like every single day they give these kids processed food. I can't stand it. What were they trying to give you for lunch? Was it a reasonable diet at lunchtime in your school or no?
So I always took my lunch when I did eat. Now at this time, so in the sixth grade, I was taking my lunch, but I was still getting really sick and couldn't keep anything down. And then seventh, eighth grade, I wasn't taking a lunch at all because I had the feeding tube at night. So almost every day I would just go to the library for lunch and read instead of going to lunch period because I wasn't eating there anyway. But the times I did go, you're exactly right. I mean, the type of food that they feed the kids in public school is just awful. I mean, it's Pop-Tarts, it's meat that doesn't look like meat, and just all kinds of junk. And, it contributes to so many health problems, but also to so many behavioral problems too. Your brain is lit up by sugar in the same way it's lit up by drugs and cocaine and that type of thing. So that's a huge problem and probably a whole nother conversation. But yeah, the food lunch that you get at public school is far from nutritious.
Right. Wow. Well, so good for you for having the discipline to not eat things that were going to make your condition worse. So then you grew up on this regime. Good job. And then you were a young adult in Washington, D.C. on an internship. Is that what I'm understanding? Where are you at this point in your life?
That's right. So right now, or?
Well, no, when you began to realize you had to go in another direction.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. So I guess backing up just a little bit, about a year or so after the feeding tube, I had another flare and the doctors determined that wasn't working. And that's when I got switched to Remicade, which is a biologic drug. And that's something that my parents were very hesitant to get on at the time. One of the big fears was it doubles your risk for cancer, which they said at the time was 2 in 1,000, and it doubled it to 4 in 1,000. I personally think it's a lot higher than that. But so I went on the Remicade and went all through high school and college dealing with that. Had a big flare my junior year, which led to a surgery. And so back to Remicade, and fast forward just a few years later, I'm in grad school at Troy. And I had spent the previous year or so trying to get Vanderbilt to do something different because, I had graduated and I was still sick. It was just so frustrating that I'd had surgery that removed part of my intestine that was supposed to be the area that was inflamed and causing all the problems. And so, but then it was back to the same old medicine. And so this was around COVID time, and I started really getting into functional medicine, or really got into the doctors who were not pro-vaccine. And I know this is not about COVID, but it just really made me start to think differently about Crohn's too. And so I started just doing a ton of research and learning about other people who had Crohn's and had healed themselves naturally, or just people who had all kinds of medical problems and were able to heal themselves naturally. Learned about some of the big people in this space. And I just started to develop this really intense belief that I could be one of those people too, that could heal myself naturally, because I thought my diet was pretty good. I loved to exercise. It just felt like something was missing. Something was missing to keep me from being healthy. And so while I was down in grad school, is when I made the decision to try to find another conventional medical doctor. Just couldn't make any progress with Vanderbilt in terms of changing up my treatment, changing up my routine, or trying something else. Made one final attempt, I guess, with conventional medicine, and then that doctor wouldn't let me do anything different anyway. So I was just like, you're a grown man. You just go with your gut here. You really believe you can be healthy. And I had done the research. I hired a functional medicine provider, learned about independent blood testing, fine-tuned my diet, learned about the different supplements, probiotics to take, and just was willing to take this leap of faith and quit the medicine and doctors cold turkey and go down this natural medicine route. And at the time, of course, nobody that I knew wanted me to do it, but including the doctors. And here's how I looked at it then, and how I look at a lot of things. There's a downside, and then there's a potential upside. The downside that I got taught was, well, you could get a flare, you could get cancer. I mean, this could kill you. But I was always focused on the upside to it, really trusting my gut. And I said, what if you're right? What if you could come off the medicine? What if you could quit your doctors? What if you could be that one of the people who heals themselves naturally? What is the potential upside to that? To living without the medicine, to living without the doctors, the routine appointments, the routine tests, to really being free and liberated without the burden of being sick for life. And I was focused on that upside to it. And so that's what I focused on when I took that leap of faith, and that was the outcome that I got. And so, like I say, that was just a couple of years ago.
Amazing. So what kinds of things did your conventional doctors say to you to discourage you from experimenting with probiotics or functional medicine, or, taking a different approach? Like, what was the pushback you were getting?
Yeah, so I would say that kind of throughout my time of dealing with them, I used to bring up things like food or probiotics, and a lot of that was just kind of dismissed from the get-go. I know they had one patient who had done a lot of stuff with food and had been able to really get herself healthy, but to them, that was the anomaly, that most people still needed to just go with the conventional medicine. And there were always things that I was kind of worried about. I mean, as I was in high school and college, certain things that I wanted tested for, testosterone, or, certain vitamins and, certain other metabolic measures that I wanted tested. And it was always, well, the insurance won't let us test for this or that type of thing. As far as probiotics go and some supplements, those were honestly just never even part of the discussion. I was on an iron supplement for a long time, but to them, everything was always just a matter of tweaking the medicine and tweaking the dose of Remicade that I was on at the time. And just never really any curiosity, I guess, about, other things that could possibly help you, whether that was fine tuning your diet or taking a fish oil or taking a probiotic or, any type of alternative treatment that may be able to not necessarily even replace at the time, but just to kind of complement what you're already doing with your conventional doctor.
So when you would say take a fish oil or a probiotic and it helped, or you would tweak your diet and it helped, and you told your conventional physicians, hey, I've tried this or that and it's easing my symptoms, what was the reaction? Just no reaction?
Yeah. So I guess I'd have to clarify. So I didn't get into a lot of that stuff. Well, I mentioned some of the probiotic stuff while I was in high school and was just kind of trying some out. But again, there was a ton of ignorance. I mean, I kind of thought the doctors may be able to help prescribe that type of thing, or, because there's thousands of supplements out there. And so if you're trying to figure it out on your own, it's really tough to do. But it was something I was always curious about, like, is this something I should be taking or looking into? And, they weren't, they said, take it if you want to, but it's not necessarily helping you. But they never had any specific recommendations or anything that was tailored to your condition. So when I started working, though, with the functional medicine provider, that's when I really got these tailored supplements based on, blood work and based on the symptoms that I was actually experiencing. And that's what really cleared things up for me. Now, by that point, I had quit the doctor, so there was really no follow-up with them on this. But yeah, that was supplements and probiotics. That's what I really got into when I hired a functional medicine provider.
Wow. So how old were you when you decided, I'm going to look into functional medicine? I'm going to hire a doctor in a different way?
Yes, ma'am. So I was 25 at the time. I was in grad school, and the previous year, while I was 24, had been a really sick year for me. I was working a job that was really stressful, and still kind of in and out of Vanderbilt, and just having all these symptoms. And it was the same thing, just prescribing more biodesodine, and just checking the labs the next time. And so I just knew something has got to change. So I was 25, and I had my first call with somebody in this space, a lady in the UK whose daughter had had Crohn's disease, and she was able to heal herself naturally. And so that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to get into that so bad, and wanted to find somebody who just had the guidance and the expertise who could help me figure it out too.
Mm-hmm.
So I was 25, still dealing with Vanderbilt, and then turned 26. And that was the point. It was coming back after Christmas break, to grad school, when I made that decision to. I'd given it one last try. I'd switched it up, hired a conventional medicine doctor, different GI doctor, and it was the same old, same old. And so I was 26 and said, all right, you can't get anywhere with these conventional medicine doctors. Trust your gut and just go the alternative, the natural route. And I really believed it would work out, and it certainly did. And so it was Crohn's disease, and this is it's kind of like an endpoint, but something we can go back to. But I describe it in the book as just being the albatross around my neck. It was just no way to live with all of the symptoms and just the routine appointments and everything that you have to deal with in that. And so I was in my early 20s and just wanted it to be gone, wanted to be healthy, didn't want to have to go to the doctor, because that's what old people are supposed to do. I mean, you go there and you're the youngest person there, and I shouldn't be here. So I just really decided when I was 25, I said, okay, you've got things you want to do, but focus right now. If it takes you a year, if it takes you two, you've got to focus on overcoming Crohn's for good, because none of the other goals and aspirations that you have in life are even going to be there or even going to be possible to you until you finally get yourself healthy. And so, wish I had done it sooner, but I'm so glad I finally did do it. It's just been the most liberating thing for me.
Amazing. What are some of the goals that at 24, 25 you realized you needed to be healthy to accomplish? Were they professional, personal, both?
So I really want to get married and have a family, more than anything.
Oh,
That's
okay.
honestly my number one goal. And so I talk about this a little bit in the book. And while I was an undergrad at UT Martin, I had a big surgery at the time. I had some rough flares, and I thought at the time, if I could just go ahead and get married, when I'm 21, 22, 23, I thought if I could just go ahead and get married and make marriage the cornerstone of my life, the foundation. If I've already done the most important thing, I'll be able to figure out Crohn's. I'll be able to figure out my career. And I reached this point where I still wanted to get married, but I just realized you can't wait on your wife forever. You're going to have to go ahead and overcome this. And I just realized this is God's hand at work. He didn't want to get me to get into that type of relationship being sick, because I was not the best version of myself.
Right.
And I'm so much healthier now. I'm the healthiest that I've ever been. And I'm in such a better place to do that, to be a good husband and a good father in the future, now that I'm healthy, now that I'm drug free, now that my wife doesn't have to have a husband who's sick and has to deal with medicine and hospitals, that type of thing. So I know God's hand was in at work and all that. And then I would say career wise too, it just created.
You froze just there. Let's see if we can get you unfrozen, Hadley. Let's see. Well, we've got a technical issue going on here, everyone. I'm going to remove Hadley from the stage and see if, yeah, he's still frozen there. I'm going to kick him from the studio, and then I'm going to encourage him to sign back in. on my phone, and maybe that will solve it. In the meantime, we can talk about it. Please get Hadley back on. I'm telling my producer. Hadley, if you're listening, sign back in, please. And in the meantime, we can talk about Crohn's disease. And if you have experience with irritable bowel syndrome or with Crohn's disease or with any kind of intestinal disorders, please share your comments, share your observations for sure. And here we've got production. Hey, production, we lost Hadley because he froze. So if you can get Mr. Ott back onto the stage, it would be wonderful. And I will now remove you because I'm live. Thank you. And so, yeah, I mean, one thing I do want to share is that, Hadley Ott did mention the connection between stress and intestinal issues, intestinal dysregulation. And so for sure, from my research, that is a real connection. Like the mind-gut connection is real. That's why you kept hearing Mr. Ott. Here he is. Hey, Mr. Ott. Sorry, you froze, and then I kicked you off the stage, and my wonderful producer brought you back on. So I was just talking in your absence. Can you hear and see me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. In your absence, I was just talking about how real the mind-gut connection is, that our brains do connect directly to our intestines, that, a gut feeling is not just a metaphor. All of our systems are interlinked, but for sure, stress, anxiety, fear, many people manifest those emotional states with digestive issues. And then, vice versa, when you've got a digestive issue, just as you were saying, Mr. Ott, that affects your mood. The other thing that affects your mood and your well-being, when you said you're not, you weren't, when you were sick, the best version of yourself in a relationship, I really empathize with that because steroids, we haven't even talked about this, but steroids directly affect people's mood. The steroids that kids are given for asthma or allergies, other inflammatory conditions, right? It all has inflammation at its base. They cause rage. I mean, you've heard of roid rage, right? They cause overwhelming, like frustration, explosiveness. It's horrible. So I don't know if you were having symptoms like that when you were on steroids, but I'm definitely familiar with that. Did you want to speak to what I just said and then pick up where you left off when we lost you?
Definitely. Now, when I was on steroids, I fortunately did not have those symptoms. I was on prednisone at the time when I was first diagnosed, but there is definitely, you're right on, there is definitely a strong connection between the mind and the gut. And I know this was something that led up to my original diagnosis, was the stress or having a poor mood, poor attitude that led to me getting sick. And I've noticed that at other times when I got flares, for instance, my junior year of college, that fall semester was really stressful in terms of the workload and the school load that I had. And I'm just almost certain that's what led to me having a really bad flare over Christmas time that led to a surgery the following summer. So there's absolutely a huge element to stress, to your environment, to your mind, your mindset, and how your gut is doing, how your body's doing as a whole. I believe that ultimately your physical health, your body health is really an expression of whatever your mental state is. I think if you have a poor mental attitude, your body is going to get sick, or your body's going to reflect that in some way. And on the flip side, the opposite's true. And that's what I learned through kind of my experience is you may have been told that you're sick for life, and that kind of gets ingrained into your subconscious that you're sick for life.
People said that to you? People said you can't heal from Crohn's. You will always be sick. They said that?
Yes, ma'am.
That's like a curse. That's terrible.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy is what it was. And so I was 12 at the time, and it was like my body was on autopilot or something. I mean, you're sick for life. And I just kind of factored that in to all of my decisions. And so, like I mentioned, or was kind of getting to career-wise, it just kind of made some of that stuff hard to plan out if you have to go to Vanderbilt every 6 or 7 weeks for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So it just kind of made it hard to think big. And I think that young people in high school and in college, it's important to think big, to really have big goals and big dreams and big aspirations. And, none of it's not an excuse, or I try not to use it as an excuse, but that was something that definitely prevented me from thinking big at the time. And so that's why I describe it as so liberating personally and professionally to having overcome that. I feel free to think big for a change. And so that's what I've been trying to do for the last couple of years since I've been drug-free and symptom-free.
Wow. Well, that's really beautiful. So now in the last 18 minutes that we have together, tell us what you did to get healthy. What was the journey with the functional medicine doctor? How did you find the functional medicine doctor? What did he or she tell you to do differently? What were some changes you made in your diet, exercise, all of it, please?
For sure. Yes, ma'am. So I will say that early on, I started exercising for the first time ever after getting diagnosed. I started walking outside, just getting outside and moving more, and really fell in love with fitness. Learned how to lift weights and started running. And that made me feel good. I mean, I knew that made me feel good. So the exercise part was something that I always had kind of down. And even when I started working with a functional medicine provider, I was still working out. And so that part was not really a problem for me. It was really the other two or three aspects of healing naturally where I needed some help with. So one was the nutritional side. He got me on the low FODMAP diet. And FODMAP, it's an acronym for fermentable polysaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and basically removes some short chain carbohydrates that are really difficult for your body to digest. And so two of the big foods that it removed from my diet were apples and rice. And I always thought they were healthy. I mean, I would eat those and I would still have symptoms, but I kind of thought nothing of it because I thought rice and apples were supposed to be healthy foods. But so it was just having that expert guidance, learning how to fine tune your diet that really helped. A big thing that the functional medicine doctor that I used recommended too was called Eliminatal Heal. And what that is it's a complete meal replacement shake. It's like a protein shake that has all the nutrients and things you need. And it can be a complete meal replacement. And so
it's called Lemonade Will Heal. What's it called?
Oh, Eliminatal Heal. It's kind of hard to pronounce.
Eliminate. You have to give us the spelling so people can look it up, please.
Eliminatal Heal. It's ELEMENTAL.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I worked with, yes, ma'am. So, and that's a dietary option or drink that I've read studies where people have gone on it for months at a time, where they're not eating any solid food. They're just having this drink. And what it allows for is a complete gut reset. So it restores the flora and fauna of your gut. It can allow for intestinal lining to repair and heal.
Oh, wow.
If there's any.
Oh, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just looking it up and I found it, but go ahead. I'll put it in the chat.
Yes, ma'am.
Please. Keep going.
Yes, ma'am. So that to me was life-changing. So I went on that for about a week or so, where I just took a week off of eating and had this drink. And I just felt so great after the fact. And it's something that I have continued to do since then. Every so often, I may go 2 or 3 days where I'm not eating any solid food at all. And I'm just having this drink and giving my body a rest, my GI tract a rest, and just allowing for a complete gut reset. And that is just an amazing thing to do. I would recommend anybody who's got IBS, IBD to look into that and to give it a try. Of course, hindsight's 20/20, but I learned while I was on that it can repair scar tissue or allow for scar tissue to heal on its own.
Wow.
So it could have allowed me to possibly avoid surgery had I known about it at the time.
Wow.
But hopefully someone now who's having a flare or possibly has to have surgery can learn about this and give it a try so that they can avoid surgery in the future. So Eliminate Heal was huge. I got on a series of probiotics, or yes, ma'am, probiotics and Curicum, omega-6, or excuse me, omega-3 fish oils, and those are natural anti-inflammatories. And so I found a ton of relief through those things.
And you said omega-3, omega-6, and curcumin. I didn't catch the first one.
Yes, ma'am. So I misspoke. Omega-3, not omega-6s.
Okay. And curcumin, like turmeric?
Curcumin. I'll have
Curcumin.
to.
Okay. You're probably right. But the substance that's in turmeric that is anti-inflammatory, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that makes sense because we're talking about inflammation. But and you took these as supplements, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
And what about probiotics? Is that a different?
Yes, ma'am. So I was on a regimen of 3 different probiotics he had me on, and I'll have to get the names and send them to you because I can't pronounce them.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, he gave me 3 different ones to try. We started with 1, then we added 2, then we added 3, and just kind of saw how I did with that. And just, I did really well on that regimen. And so that's just, again, we're having the expertise of someone who knows what they're doing, someone who knows about probiotics and these supplements, how beneficial it was to work with him, because he was kind of able to tailor a supplement and probiotic regimen that would meet my needs and allow me to clear up some symptoms here. So those were
the low FODMAP diet. And was there a book that you were using to the autocorrect is changing it to low roadmap, low FODMAP. Was there a book you were using to orient you to the low FODMAP diet? I mean, I'm familiar with it, but I know it's kind of a detailed regimen. So I would need a book if I were going on that diet, or someone expert.
So Dr. Ruscio does have a book. I believe it's called Healthy Gut, Healthy You. Mm-hmm. There were 2 big books, though, that I read that I kind of kept reading and were kind of my guide points as I was going down this journey. Mm-hmm. One was Dr. Jordan Rubin has a book called Patient Heal Thyself, which is an amazing read. A lot of great information in there. And the other one was Jeannie Patel Thompson has another one called it's called Listen to Your Gut. And it's a great big book. It's kind of like an encyclopedia for natural remedies and for people with Crohn's and IBS and ulcerative colitis. And she gets into, I believe this is part of her point too. It's something I make in my book is, there's no one size fits all solution with Crohn's and with autoimmune disease in general. There's bio-individuality. Everyone is different. So what worked for me may not work for someone else. You may have to take parts and pieces of different regimens, different diets in order to find what works for you. But what I really want people to not be afraid to try, not be afraid to try and seek alternatives. And healing yourself naturally, it's not easy. It definitely requires some patience. It requires some grace, some discipline. You're going to have to just kind of tinker with your body, with food, with supplements to figure out what works for you. But it's so much more rewarding to do it naturally, because once you are healed, I mean, it's just the greatest feeling in the world.
Amazing. Well, this is very, very encouraging. What would you say to people who are listening to this and thinking, that sounds great, but it's beyond my means, it's too expensive, or I'm scared to go outside what my insurance covers economically? Can you speak to that? Is it actually affordable to do what you did for people who don't have huge extra revenue sitting around?
I will say that I healed myself naturally on a shoestring college budget. It is definitely tight. I get it. It does cost money to be healthy, is what I will say. And that's a whole nother that's a whole nother conversation. But yeah, functional medicine, supplements, healthy food, that does cost money. But here's what I would say and here's just the position that I was in. I used what I had to heal myself, because I realized the money that I had, which was, not a huge pile, but I said, this is an investment in yourself and in your future, and you've got to make it now, because you may not live to see the growth of this money, or to spend it, unless you just go ahead and take care of your health now. So I really had to kind of shift my mindset and my priorities money wise, because I grew up kind of in the Dave Ramsey school of thought, where you just don't spend money, you're tight as a tick. And so it was kind of out of character for me to just break down and spend the money that I needed to spend on supplements and on functional medicine providers, that type of thing, in order to get healthy. I will say too, though, there's so many free things that you can do if you want to be healthy. I talk about this in the book. There's the crucial mindset shift. You have to shift your mindset from being sick for life to wanting to be healthy. And I'll say this for anybody too who wants to go down this path. Maybe they can't afford it, or they think they can't afford it. Well, are you doing right now what you can do to be healthy? And the first big step is you really have to desire it. You really have to want to be healthy. I don't think that anybody can just do this kind of half-heartedly or try it. And, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I really believe that you have to want to be healthy, and you have to have this intense belief that you can be healthy. So I would say definitely start there. There's a huge faith component to healing. I really believe that you have to have a relationship with Jesus, that you have to have strong faith. I call it the triad of healing, that you have to have strong faith in him, and then anchored to that on either side is nutrition, is fitness. You have to start with that intense belief, and then eat the way you're supposed to eat. Again, just not being afraid to try different diets, whether it's low FODMAP, keto, the Maker's diet, just the eliminator diet. Start keeping a food diary and figuring out what foods work for you. What are your trigger foods? What do you need to get rid of? And then making sure you're exercising. Your body's meant to move. Early on, I figured out that exercise was a great medicine. It just feels good to get out and move, because your body's meant to move. So there's several free things that people can start doing, even if they don't have the budget to do it. I guess kind of back to your original question, insurance is not going to pay for this stuff typically. And it does cost money. And I would just go back to, this is kind of a one-time investment in your health that,
Right. Yeah.
You can put it off. You're never going to be in the perfect financial spot to do anything or to get yourself healthy. And so if you're young, I know money's tight, especially in this economy, but it was something that I was able to do, like I say, kind of on a shoestring college budget. And so definitely shop around, but I definitely think there's some affordable options for you.
For sure. And thank you for spelling all of that out, because, I think about, I had to invest several $100s in herbs for my own health journey. And I was like, that $35 for a packet of herbs, that's really expensive. It's really adding up. But literally you don't calculate till you're better, right?
Exactly.
How much money you save by having energy, by being more productive, by having better relationships, like not being sick, just not being kind of flat out on the couch or disabled or whatever it is that you're dealing with. So I would second what you're saying. I mean, I would also throw this out, just throwing it out, not telling you what to do, but I don't have health insurance, and that's intentional. I try to put aside a little money in case I ever do need surgery, God forbid, but not having health insurance can actually be better for your health journey, because you're not getting the weird tests. You're not being given the standard of care, which can often be big pharma, counterproductive. They're not finding things to chemotherapize for, their own profit motive, with the 20 to 30% false positives that a lot of, chemotherapy conditions involve. So I'm not telling people what to do, but it's worked out great for me to invest in supplements, invest in herbs, invest in alternative healing, not have insurance, and just try to keep a little bit of savings in case, God forbid, I do need surgery or something serious. Just putting that out there. So you, in the last few minutes, please tell us, where do people find your book? What led you to write a book? How are people responding to the book?
Yes, ma'am. So this time, I mentioned this time 2 years ago is when I went down that journey and was able to heal myself naturally, come off the medicine, quit the doctors. And so July 2024, I was interning in DC and just woke up with this strong call in my heart to write this book to try to help other people, especially young people in high school, college age, and then also the parents of kids who are getting diagnosed. And there's a lot of scariness and uncertainty with that diagnosis. What are we going to do? And so I really want to reach those type of people. And the book, started writing it this time last year. It was January through May. I was working on it, got it under contract while I was in DC a second time. Wow. And so I came back to Tennessee to pursue it. And so it comes out next, or this month now, April 28th. Fantastic. And people can get it on Amazon. And I've been really thrilled with a lot of the feedback that I've gotten from people. Just gotten tremendous support and love from people some you don't even expect it from. Right. But I've just been really pleased so far, and I'm excited for it to launch because I really believe it's going to help a lot of people. And if I can just show it to your audience right quick.
So. I was just going to say, the author in me wants you to repeat the title and the subtitle and remind people that where they can get it. So go ahead and hold it up again, please. It's called Drug-Free Crohn's. And then what's the subtitle again?
Yes, ma'am. Overcoming Big Doctors, Big Hospitals, and Big Pharma. And it'll be available on Amazon April 28th.
Wonderful. And you got a publisher to publish it, like an actual publisher? It's not self-published?
So it is self-published with Scribe. I was so naive about this. I had no idea how hard it was to get a publisher if you're completely unknown. So I went the self-publishing route, but Scribe, They were great.
Why not? These days, there's no reason there's no reason not to self-publish. So it'll launch on the 21st, you said, of April? Is that correct?
28th.
28th of April. You can get it on Amazon. You heard about it here. The author is Hadley Ott, a wonderful name for an author, very unforgettable. A young man who has healed himself drug-free. I'm sure the fact that you were encouraged internally to write this book means it is going to help a lot of people. I can't wait to order a couple of copies for the people in my life who are dealing with this kind of issue. And I just really want to commend you and thank you for sharing your journey with all the rest of us. I know that people listening, a number of people listening are going to get encouragement and practical information from what you've shared. Anything you want to say upon departing? Where do people find you? Are you on socials? Not yet.
Yes, ma'am. So I've probably been the most offline guy in my generation. I just joined social media on account of this book. So if y'all could kind of help get the numbers up for me, I'm on Instagram, Hadley Ott DFC, and you can find me on Facebook and TikTok and all of that stuff too. So lastly, I just want to give people hope. That's kind of my main goal with this book, is just provide a really optimistic message for people who are struggling with health problems and they want an answer. And I really believe through nutrition, fitness, and faith, anybody can be healthy. And I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ott, for reaching out. Thank you for sharing your journey. Everyone, get online. You can pre-order even before the book comes out officially, and you really should. It helps the algorithm push the book even more if you pre-order. And, thank you so much for sharing your journey. And I'm sure you're helping tons of people. And I'm sure we'll talk to you again. Thank you, Hadley Ott. And thank you for sharing your journey overcoming Crohn's disease, drug-free Crohn's. Wait, last time title?
Yes, ma'am. Drug-free Crohn's, overcoming big doctors, big hospitals, and big pharma.
Beautiful. Thank you again, Hadley Ott. We'll see you again. Thank you for joining us.